Hi guys. So I've been putting off making this video for a little bit only because I want to make sure that I'm not just jumping to conclusions with this situation, and I tried to resolve the situation with the person before I made this video, but obviously they were being very uncooperative, so here we are. I have been scammed by a gear shop owner on Instagram. I tried trading them a Bridgeport harness for a biothane counterbalance harness, and I was scammed. So I'm just gonna talk about that a little bit and also do a little bit of a buyer beware situation with them, because I don't want any of you guys to get scammed as well. And also, I have screenshots, and I also have the chat open, and I'm just gonna scroll through the chat so I can be as accurate as possible with the timelines. And yeah, it's been close to 2 months since we started the trade, and I still haven't received their end of the deal. On June 11th, this person posted a couple pictures of pre-mades on their story that were all biothane, and some had counterbalance handles, which is something I need. And I replied to their story saying, would you take a custom trade for it and or a straight front Bridgeport? I'm super broke right now, so I don't have any cash for one. And they said, can I see the Bridgeport? I sent them a picture of this, a straight front Bridgeport with a handle. I got the Bridgeport from a trade myself, but unfortunately, my dog didn't like how it fit on her, and it didn't meet my needs because it didn't have a counterbalance handle on it. So I decided just to trade it for something else. And someone said, oh yeah, and the person said, oh yes, for sure. I said, okay, awesome. I'm looking for something Y front with counterbalance, and if you could add a short guide handle onto it, it would be a blessing. I can also do a custom patch set on top of the Bridgeport. And they said, I could do that. What's your color preference? I have a couple base harnesses I can add to if they're the right size. I apologize for the late response. I took a hibernation nap. This is all within June 11th. So them replying a couple hours late is a late response for them. I said, that's so real. Preferably black or white, 28-inch girth. And they said, I have a tan and white one I could do. I said, okay. And then we just chatted about some random stuff for a little bit, and I said, do you want patches with the Bridgeport? And they said, if that would be okay, yes. I said, of course, I can show you what I've done so you could get some ideas if you want. They said, okay. When I work on yours tonight, I can show you how I make my semi-rigid handles and how I make the harnesses safe. And we were just talking about gear making in general, because if you guys don't know, I also make gear. I just don't have the capability of making a counterbalance harness that could be genuinely cleared from mobility for my dog, which is why I haven't made one already. I make Y fronts, but I don't make counterbalance harnesses specifically. And they said, what size guide would you need on the 12th? So this is the following day. I said 4-inch counterbalance and 8-inch guide. And they said, okay, perfect. Would you be willing to ship the Bridgeport sometime this week? And I said, yes. I said, let me know when you're shipping it, and I will try to ship the Bridgeport same day. That was on June 14th. They said, should ship Monday. On June 16th, I said, I should be shipping it out soon. Little did I know I would be having a very severe POTS episode that would leave me bedbound. And I also, in between this, I talked about my shipping schedule. I was like, hey, typically I ship on Mondays, so your harness is probably going to wait to get shipped with the rest of my patches, like my patch orders and stuff, if I can't ship it sooner. They were perfectly fine with that. And I was like, okay, give me your shipping address and name. I created the label, but unfortunately I was unable to ship it at the time because of unforeseen circumstances, which I notified them about that. And on June 17th, I asked them, have you shipped yet? They said that they got the label, they purchased the label online, but the printer ran out of ink, so they have to go to the office tomorrow. June 20th, I said, hey, did you ever ship it out? They said, I have the label printed, I'll take it tomorrow. June 21st, I said, okay, that's fine, I totally understand. June 22nd, I said, hey, sorry to keep nagging, I'm going on a trip soon and I was hoping I could have it for the trip. Do you know when it should get here? They said if ships Monday, it should arrive Thursday. On the 23rd, I said, okay, sounds good. I shipped theirs on the 26th. I will say I was going through some health issues at the time. If you guys remember a post, I was actually in the hospital for a little bit of that. So I do completely understand unforeseen circumstances, and I do understand your health getting in the way of being able to ship things, but it should not take 2 months. June 26th, I ended up shipping out their item. That's the label. I'm not going to open it or anything, just so it protects both their and my personal information. And they said, thank you, I'm getting yours this afternoon. My body threw a fit today. 2 days after that, I said, hey, have you shipped? It was read with no answer. A day after that, so the 29th, I sent a question mark. That was read with no answer. Now, so what? 4 days later, after the original, hey, have you shipped? I said, hey, I'm not sure if you're going through some stuff, but it's been a little bit since you said you'd ship my stuff out. And I would like some communication about what's going on and if I'm going to be receiving my package. That was on June 30th. They said, again, there's no business-related responses right now. So this person has very, so far what we could see is this person has very poor businessmanship. And on their story, which I have a screenshot, they basically just said that they're not responding to business messages right now, which is great and all, but if you've been putting off shipping my harness, I would like to know. Anyways, when they did get back, I asked them if they had shipped the harness again. So when they got back July 3rd, and they said, back in the shop, your package will ship this afternoon. I said, okay, cool, thank you. They said, I did want to ask you about something. I got my package yesterday and we talked about putting the patches in there to cover the cost of the 2 rigid handles, but they weren't in there. I said, oh my god, yes, I forgot, I'm so sorry. I'm having a really hard time with my brain fog and that's totally my bad. What kind of patches were you looking for again? And I ended up going through the chats and realized that I sent pictures of patches that they could pick from that I had pre-made and they never end up picking. So I probably, in a brain fog, was just like, okay, packaged and shipped, you know? And shipping patches after that is fine by me. Leave it. And they said, all good, I'm open to whatever. Do you currently have any pre-mades? I said, I do, but I'm home at the moment. I'll send pics when I get home. I said, okay. July 3rd, I said, hey, I landed myself in the hospital again, so it might be a few days, so sorry. And sent with a picture of me genuinely in the hospital. July 4th, I said, hey, do you have a tracking number yet? Because they were supposed to ship it on the 3rd. They said, I don't. I got sent to the ER via ambulance. I'm not going to reveal any of their personal information on their health issues because that's definitely something that they might not want online. But I do want to talk about the issue at hand. I said, okay, feel better. July 6th, again, I said, what are you looking for patch-wise? I can also send pre-made leash wraps instead. They said mostly guide-specific ones. I said that I don't have anything like that and limited on files I have, and I sent them a couple pictures of different leash wraps I have and a couple patches, and they saw a med bag in the background, and they said that they liked it. And I was like, okay, well, we talked about sending patches. I would compromise and send a leash wrap, even though it costs a little bit more for me. But med bag was not in there. But just to appease them, I was like, whatever. They said, let's do a med bag. And I said that my embroidery files are limited. They said, if I email you a file, can you do it? And I was like, yes. I sent them my email. And yeah, I then said, do you know when you'll have the harness shipped out by? They said, hopefully tonight or tomorrow. I'm home, so we should be able to do so. This was July 7th. Okay, July 9th. Have you shipped yet? Also, have you sent me the email for the embroidery file? I'm needing the harness for mobility purposes, and I know stuff comes up in life, but sooner rather than later would be preferred. This is on July 9th. And they replied with a paw emoji, which is great and all, but that doesn't answer my question. July 10th, I said, hey, just checking in, question mark. I was left on red. And in the meantime, as I was being left on red, they posted something on their story saying that they took their reactive dog out on a big training outing and did some stuff. So I know that they are not experiencing something that would get in the way of them shipping it, like health issues. They just genuinely were being negligent. On July 10th, in the evening, I said, okay, so I sent you $80 worth of product, and I'm trying to continue to fill my end of the trade, and it's clear that you've been ignoring me in dodging shipping out your end of the deal. I understand that stuff comes up in life, and I've been trying to wait it out in hopes that this is just miscommunication. I've been waiting for you to ship my product since June 16th, and it is now July 10th. I will be waiting to hear from you so we can resolve this situation because I don't want to make this a big deal. Thank you. They said, again, it is packed, but I have not been able to leave the house, let alone fight USPS to actually pick up when they say they will. So I will have my caregiver drop it off when they can, which is funny because they just talked about going on a big training outing out in public on their story. And a lot of the times when I would say, hey, just checking in, and it would get ignored, they would be posting on their story like a couple hours after I sent them a message. So I know that they have the capability of replying to the message. July 13th, I said, update, question mark, nothing. July 16th, hey, just checking in again. And they said, hey, it shipped out yesterday. I lost the tracking receipt, however, so I will have to find that. I said, thank you. And then last Tuesday, I said, hey, it's been a week since you shipped and it's still not here. Did you find the tracking by chance? Question mark. No answer. I was left on red. Then Thursday, I said, I just sent a question mark. Thursday, they replied about 8 hours later and said, hey, I was out of state for an emergency. I'll check on it tomorrow morning. I said, okay, thank you. Friday, I said, hey, just looking for an update. I know you said you'd check on it this morning. They said, yes, I will. I said, okay, thank you. Friday, I sent a question mark. Saturday, I said, hey, as of this upcoming Monday, it'll be 2 weeks since you shipped the harness. I haven't seen a picture of the harness yet, much less gotten a tracking number, and now it's not showing up. I'm starting to doubt whether it exists or not. If you pre-printed the label like you told me over a month ago, there should be record of the tracking number in your account for the company that you use to ship with, USPS. I would know because I ship with them as well. If you could please get back with me with a tracking number, that would be great. Thank you. That was seen on Saturday, and I sent them a question mark yesterday to get no answer. Then, so I ended up sending them a message this morning saying, so it's very apparent that I'm being ignored once again, and I think it's safe to say that I'm being scammed as well. I've tried to resolve this issue multiple times, and I feel like I'm begging you to cooperate at this point. It seems you can't produce a picture of the harness I was promised, or the tracking info, so at this point I'm going to have to assume it doesn't exist or is not in your possession. I've been trying to work this deal out and get you to ship your part of the deal since June 16th. I request that you try and resolve this issue with me within the next 48 hours, or a buyer beware post will be made about this situation online. Thank you. So, So I was then left on red, and they just started posting random stuff on their story again. So it is very clear that I'm being ignored. Oh, and while all this is happening, I talked to a few of my friends about it. They messaged that person about doing trades, and literally while I was being ignored, they were like, oh yeah, we could do trades. Here, let me send you some of the stuff I have. So it is very, very clear that I'm being ignored and that they scammed me out of a harness. Now, it's one thing to be scammed by a person you don't know. And that's why I don't necessarily do trades with just any person. But this is a gear shop that's affiliated with multiple brands that I've already purchased from, that has ambassadorships, and is a model. So it's a little different when like they're very frequent and you think that you know them, but you really don't. So anyways, yeah, I have been scammed out of a mobility harness. So I am still out of a mobility harness, out of out of $80 worth of gear, plus the shipping that I paid for, which was like $15, and still being ignored. So now this is getting taken to social media because I don't want you guys to fall in the same trap. None of this video is scripted, by the way. Usually if I do a sit-down video, I put like a little bit of notes that I can work off of. I haven't done that. And in many of these screenshots, it says like seen 24 hours ago. But then it'll also say active 49 minutes ago and have them posting an hour ago. So I know they're on. It is very clear that I am being scammed. And now some people can say, oh, well, maybe it was shipped and then USPS lost the package, but she would have given me the tracking information. I explained exactly how she can obtain the tracking information because she pre-purchased it through her account. And she had many chances to and still has not. So it is very clear that she's not capable of producing the tracking because it doesn't exist. So yeah, it has been over a month and a half. I still have not received my product. I've been checking the mail every day, asking my neighbors. Nobody's gotten it. So their user on Instagram is feralpuppylove_. And they do have a TikTok somewhere. And I just found their TikTok. Their TikTok is Feral Puppy Princess with the U as an X. So I will be basically putting out a bunch of screenshots with the whole situation to show proof on my end that I was following through what I was supposed to. And yeah, still don't have a mobility harness, which sucks because struggling with your mobility is rough. And you'd think that, I don't know, since we're both disabled, like you'd have a little bit of sympathy enough to like not want to scam somebody out of not just like, oh, a little vest or harness or something, like a genuine, I need this piece of equipment for mobility. Sorry, literally just fixing my makeup. But yeah. Thank you guys for watching this video. Please beware of this person. Do not make any purchases from them, and make sure your friends don't make purchases from them as well. Keep yourself safe, and don't get scammed out of mobility gear like I do, because now I still have to come out of pocket or find a way to afford the mobility gear that I need. That is just about keeping me out of a wheelchair, which I'm currently sitting in. So, yeah.